They thought she'd sit down and take it. Instead, she walked out, hired a lawyer, and played their own dash cam footage on a giant screen in front of the whole city. Her husband's career ended that day. Watch till the end. Subscribe now.
My annual salary is $3 million. At my mother-in-law's 65th birthday party, she seated my husband's mistress at the head of the table. I didn't fight or argue. I just turned around and walked out. That night, my husband called me 73 times. I declined every call and then blocked his number. The Jubilee Hall, a private room in one of New York City's most exclusive restaurants, The Crown, was particularly boisterous tonight. Light from a colossal crystal chandelier was nearly blinding, glinting off the clinking wine glasses on the round tables. The air was a strange mix of premium single malt scotch and a cheap, cloying perfume. The party was in full swing when Evelyn Reed pushed open the heavy mahogany doors. She wore a sharply tailored black Tom Ford suit and 7-centimeter Jimmy Choo heels, a polished mahogany gift box in her hand. A trace of fatigue touched her face. She had just wrapped a grueling 6-hour transatlantic merger conference call. But the powerful aura, honed by years at the top of her industry, was undeniable. The moment she entered, the clamorous hall fell into a sudden hush. Well, well, look who it is. If it isn't our busy little work bee, Evelyn, a sharp, piercing voice broke the silence. The speaker was the guest of honor, and Evelyn's mother-in-law, Sharon Miller. She was clad in a flashy, tasteless, deep red sequin dress, a thick gold chain around her neck. Her face was all smiles, but her eyes overflowed with displeasure. "Happy birthday, Sharon," Evelyn said, with a placid expression ignoring the barb in her tone. "There was a last-minute emergency at the firm. I'm sorry I'm late." She walked toward the main table holding the gift box. Inside was a vintage Cartier diamond brooch she'd won at auction. An exquisite piece worth over $150,000, enough for a down payment on a decent Manhattan apartment. But as she approached the main table, she froze. The 12-seat table was filled with the core members of the Miller family. And in the seat of honor next to her mother-in-law, the seat that should have been hers, sat a young woman, Chloe Sullivan, a new intern in her husband Michael Miller's department and, according to his recent comments, an indispensable new mentee. At this moment, Chloe was wearing a simple white dress, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, her makeup innocent and fresh. She looked every bit the pure, doe-eyed girl. She was carefully peeling a shrimp and placing it on Sharon's plate, their heads close together as if they were mother and daughter. And Evelyn's husband, Michael, was sitting right next to Chloe. A flash of panic crossed Michael's face when he saw Evelyn. He instinctively started to rise, but a sharp glance from Sharon made him sink back into his chair. "Evelyn, don't you blame me for not saving you a seat," Sharon said, slowly wiping her mouth with a napkin in a textbook display of passive aggression. "What could I do? You're such a big shot, I couldn't have dozens of people starving while they waited for you. Besides," she added, her eyes raking over Evelyn's suit, "you look like you're here for a hostile takeover, not a family dinner." Stifled chuckles rippled through the room. Evelyn's gaze swept coldly across the main table. There were no empty seats, not even an extra chair. "Sharon, that's my seat," Evelyn said. Her voice was calm and devoid of emotion, but it carried an undeniable weight. Chloe looked up as if startled, a deer in the headlights. Her chopsticks clattered onto the table and her eyes instantly welled with tears. She turned an aggrieved face to Michael. "Oh, Michael. Did I do something wrong? I just saw an empty seat and your mother asked me to sit here and keep her company." I honestly had no idea it was Evelyn's seat. She made a show of getting up, then swayed delicately as if she were about to faint. "Oh, for heaven's sake, you just stay put," Sharon said, grabbing Chloe's arm. She then shot Evelyn a hostile look. "I told Chloe to sit here. She has manners. She took the whole day off for my birthday to come and help with everything. Not like some people who make a little money and forget their own name, showing up late to their own mother-in-law's birthday." Michael finally spoke, though he couldn't meet Evelyn's eyes. His voice was weak. "You know Evelyn is busy with work. And that brooch she bought for you, it's incredibly expensive." "Expensive? How expensive?" Sharon scoffed, her greedy eyes flicking to the mahogany box in Evelyn's hand before she feigned indifference again. "Evelyn, I'm not nagging, but a woman's most important job is her family. Look at Chloe. Her salary might not be much, but she's thoughtful. She knows how to take care of people. What's the point of you making nearly $3 million a year? We barely see your face. And besides, all that money is just luck our family brought you. Do you think you'd be where you are today without my son's support?" A deep, incredulous laugh bubbled up inside Evelyn. Her annual salary was $3 million. She was a partner at one of the top investment banks in the country, handling billion-dollar deals. From the mortgage on this family's Upper East Side apartment to the lease on their luxury cars, from Sharon's medical bills to Michael's designer suits and watches, was there a single thing she hadn't paid for? Michael's so-called senior manager position paid a mere $80,000 a year, not even enough to cover the income tax she paid. And now, at his mother's birthday party, her seat had been given away to his blatant mistress, and her husband sat by like a coward, letting his mother humiliate his wife. Michael Miller Evelyn said, ignoring Sharon's tirade and fixing her husband with a piercing gaze. "Don't you have anything to say?" Sweat beaded on Michael's forehead. He knew bringing Chloe here was wrong, a slap in Evelyn's face. But he didn't have the courage to defy his mother, nor could he bear to see the delicate flower next to him get hurt. He stood up, forced a smile, and walked over to Evelyn, lowering his voice. "Come on, Ev, everyone's here. Mom's getting older, she just wants a lively party. Chloe is a guest, she came to help. It wouldn't be right to kick her out. How about, I ask the staff to add a chair, or maybe you could squeeze in at the kids' table over there, add a chair." The kids' table. Evelyn stared at the man before her, as if seeing him for the first time. 2 years ago, when she married him, she had been drawn to his earnestness, his gentle nature, his family-oriented values. She thought she could be the warrior outside, and he could provide emotional support at home, creating a kind of balance. Now she understood. It wasn't earnestness, it was weakness. It wasn't gentleness, it was spinelessness. And the so-called emotional support was just the hypocrisy of a man who complained about his meals while living a life of luxury funded by his wife. Evelyn's gaze traveled past Michael to Chloe. The young woman was hiding behind Sharon, a nearly imperceptible smirk of victory playing on her lips. Her eyes were filled with pride. It was the posture of a winner. Suddenly, Evelyn smiled. A dazzlingly beautiful smile, but one that was chilling to the bone. She didn't fly into a rage and flip the table as Sharon might have expected, nor did she get into a public argument as Michael had feared. She simply gave a slight nod and said in an unnervingly calm tone, "If you think Miss Sullivan is more thoughtful and better suited for that seat, Mother, then so be it." Sharon was taken aback for a moment, surprised that her usually formidable daughter-in-law was being so compliant. A satisfied cough escaped her lips, finally showing some sense. "Now put the gift down and go sit over there." She pointed to a small, neglected table in the corner where a few noisy children were playing and some distant relatives were picking their teeth. Evelyn looked down at the mahogany box in her hand. Inside was the dazzling emerald green vintage Cartier brooch, a priceless piece of art. To acquire this birthday gift, she had called in 3 favors and incurred 2 debts. "The gift, you say?" Evelyn echoed softly. She raised her hand, extending the box toward Sharon. Sharon's eyes lit up as she reached out to take it. "Well, at least you have some decency left." Just as Sharon's fingers were about to touch the box, Evelyn tilted her wrist and simply let it go. Thud. The heavy mahogany box landed squarely on the lid of a metal trash can next to the main table, making a dull, hollow sound. The entire room went dead silent. Sharon's hand froze in mid-air, the smile on her face instantly stiffening, then turning a shade of purple with rage. "Oh, my hand slipped," Evelyn said coolly, not a hint of apology in her voice. "But it doesn't matter. After all, if you think I'm such an ungrateful daughter-in-law, this gift would just be an eyesore. Since Miss Sullivan is so thoughtful, why don't you ask her to buy you a replacement?" Without a second glance at the shocked faces, she turned to leave. "Evelyn Reed, what is the meaning of this?" "You stop right there," Sharon, finally snapping out of her shock, slammed her hand on the table, trembling with fury. "Are you rebelling? If you walk out that door today, don't you ever think of setting foot in the Miller house again?" Michael rushed over in a panic to grab Evelyn's arm. "Evelyn, what are you doing? It's Mom's birthday. Stop throwing a tantrum. Come back and apologize." "Let go," Evelyn said, stopping. She turned her head, her gaze on Michael's hand as sharp as a razor blade. It was so cold that he instinctively released her. "Michael Miller," Evelyn said, smoothing the sleeve he had wrinkled. Her voice rang out clearly in the quiet room. "The Miller house. In case you've forgotten, I made the down payment on that house. I pay the mortgage. Even the villa your mother is currently living in is under my name, Evelyn Reed. And you're telling me not to set foot in it." She let out a short, contemptuous laugh, her eyes sweeping over the pale-faced Sharon and the terrified Chloe. "If I wanted to, I could have all of you out on the street by tomorrow." With that, she turned without a backward glance, pushed open the grand doors and strode out. Behind her, she could hear Sharon's hysterical curses and the sound of breaking plates. But none of it had anything to do with her anymore. Stepping out of the Crown, the cool late autumn night air hit her face. Evelyn took a deep breath, feeling the toxic energy in her chest finally begin to dissipate. A valet quickly brought her black Bentley Continental GT, respectfully holding the door open. Evelyn slid into the driver's seat. The heavy door shut, sealing off the noise of the outside world, but it couldn't block the frantic vibration of the phone on the passenger seat. The screen lit up and went dark over and over. The caller ID husband seemed like a sick joke. Evelyn didn't answer or decline. She just gave it a cold glance, started the engine, and pressed the accelerator. The W12 engine let out a low roar, and the black car shot forward like an arrow melting into the glittering river of New York City traffic. There was no music in the car, only the incessant buzzing of the phone on the leather seat, a perfect representation of Michael's panicked heart at that moment. Evelyn's long, strong fingers gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The truth was, she wasn't surprised by tonight's events. She had even anticipated them. When she married Michael 2 years ago, almost everyone around her had objected. At the time, she was known in the investment banking world as a relentless workaholic. Her salary wasn't the astronomical figure it was now, but it was already dozens of times Michael's. And Michael, he was just an ordinary junior manager at a stable corporation. His personality so placid it bordered on indecisive. What had she seen in him back then? The man who would bring her a bowl of warm soup when she worked late into the night. The man who would clumsily brew her ginger tea when she was suffering from cramps. She had seen a rare stability and sincerity in a world full of calculations and transactions. She thought that if she was strong enough, she could protect their home, protect this simple affection. But she was wrong. The one thing in this world that cannot withstand testing is human nature. The easiest thing to lose balance is an unequal marriage. As her career skyrocketed, as her salary broke into the millions and she became the youngest partner at her firm, Michael changed. First, it was silence. Whenever she excitedly talked about a successful project, he would just force a smile, say, "Oh, congratulations," and then go out to the balcony to smoke. Then it was sensitivity. When she bought him a $50,000 watch, he never wore it afraid his colleagues would call him a kept man. When she wanted to buy a bigger house, he said their current place was fine, that he didn't want to live in her charity. Finally, it devolved into vanity and vengeful indulgence. Evelyn's thoughts drifted with the passing streetlights back to a rainy night 3 months ago. She had come home early from a business trip, wanting to surprise him. As she opened the door, she heard her mother-in-law's whispering voice from the kitchen. "Michael, son, don't let that Evelyn walk all over you. Sure, she makes good money, but when a woman is that aggressive, she crushes a man's spirit. Look at you in front of her. You don't even seem like a man anymore." Then came Michael's frustrated reply. "Mom, stop it. If I don't rely on her, do you think my pathetic salary could pay the mortgage on this apartment? Oh, I'm not telling you to divorce her. She's our family's cash cow. If you break up with her, who's going to pay for your sister's college tuition? Who's going to buy my medicine? What I mean is it's only natural for you to have a little fun on the side. When a man feels smothered at home, he needs an outlet." At that moment, standing in the doorway, Evelyn felt a chill spread through her entire body. That very night, she found a lipstick that wasn't hers in Michael's car and a receipt from a cheap motel. The date on the receipt was a night Michael had claimed to be working late. She didn't confront him immediately. Instead, as if conducting due diligence for a merger, she began to observe calmly. Soon the name Chloe Sullivan surfaced. A fresh college graduate, young, flirtatious, a girl who couldn't stop saying, "Mr. Miller, you're so amazing. Mr. Miller, you're so brilliant." This cheap worship was filling the void of masculine pride that Michael no longer felt with Evelyn. Michael was enjoying the material life Evelyn provided, driving the luxury car she bought, living in the penthouse she owned, all while seeking validation as a strong man from another woman. How pathetic. And how disgusting. Evelyn had given him a chance. A month ago, she had probed gently. "How's the new intern at your company, I hear? The Gen Z kids are really changing the office atmosphere. You need to make sure you maintain professional boundaries." At the time, Michael's eyes had darted around nervously as he swore, "Oh, them, they're just kids. They don't know anything. I have to teach them everything from scratch. It's exhausting." What kind of boundaries would there be to cross? Watching his clumsy performance at that moment, Evelyn's heart had died completely. She didn't expose him. She just quietly began preparations for asset division and instructed her assistant Sarah to start gathering evidence. She had wanted to end this marriage with a final shred of dignity. She had hoped they could part amicably. But tonight, the actions of Sharon and Michael had completely crossed her final line. Was that a birthday party? No, it was a meticulously planned compliance test. Sharon had deliberately invited the mistress, deliberately seated her at the head of the table to publicly humiliate Evelyn. It was to show her that in this family, no matter how much money she made, she had to bow to her mother-in-law. She had to tolerate her husband's infidelity. She had to lower her head. If Evelyn had tolerated it today, if she had sat at that corner table, then tomorrow Chloe would have been moving into her penthouse, sleeping in her bed and spending her money. And that coward Michael, who stood by and said nothing, would probably have been gloating internally, thrilled that two women were finally fighting over him. Evelyn let out a cold laugh and sharply turned the wheel. The car slid into the underground parking garage of a five-star hotel. This was a long-term residence she kept in the city, known only to her assistant Sarah. The car stopped, the engine died. For a few seconds, the world was finally quiet. Then the phone on the passenger seat started vibrating madly again. Evelyn picked it up. The screen showed 72 missed calls. As she held it, the 73rd call came through. It was Michael again. Evelyn stared at the flashing name, the last bit of warmth in her eyes fading. She pressed the answer button, but said nothing. From the other end, Michael's anxious and slightly irritated voice burst out. "Evelyn, you finally answered. Do you have any idea how rude you were today?" Mom was so angry, her heart condition almost flared up. "Chloe has been crying nonstop, saying it's all her fault that you misunderstood. You need to come back right now. Even if you don't apologize, you need to come back and fix this situation. If you just leave like that, what will the relatives think? What will they think of our family? Of me." There was no concern for where she was. No question about whether she was safe. Only blame. Only his pride and his aggrieved little mistress. Evelyn listened quietly, a sneer forming on her lips. "Michael Miller," she said, her voice terrifyingly calm, cutting through his incessant complaints. "What? You have something to say. When are you coming back?" Michael paused, softening his tone slightly. "If you felt wronged, you could have come back, and I would have comforted you personally. Did you really have to make such a scene in front of everyone?" "There's no need," Evelyn said flatly. "What do you mean, no need? I don't need your comfort, and I don't need to go back." Evelyn saw her reflection in the car window. Her eyes were burning with ambition and determination. "Michael Miller, if you like that thoughtful Miss Sullivan so much, then I'll grant you your wish. That house, that bed, and your materialistic mother, I'll give them all to you." "Evelyn, what are you talking about? Don't be impulsive. What couple doesn't fight?" Michael finally sensed that something was seriously wrong. His voice began to tremble. "I mean," Evelyn said, enunciating each word with chilling clarity, "let's get a divorce." "Divorce?" Michael's voice went up an octave. "Are you crazy? Over something so trivial, Evelyn. Don't try to scare me with divorce. You're 30 now. What kind of man do you think you can find after a divorce? Some young kid who's only after your money?" Even at this moment, he was trying to manipulate her. Evelyn felt it was no longer worth wasting another word on him. "You'll find out soon enough whether I'm scaring you or not. Just wait for the papers from my lawyer." With that, she hung up without hesitation. Then her fingers moved, quickly blocking his number, removing him from all social media and payment apps. After completing this digital exorcism, she let out a long breath, as if expelling 2 years of accumulated poison from her chest. The world was finally quiet. Evelyn opened the car door, her heels clicking on the concrete floor as she walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the top-floor presidential suite. As the doors closed, she called her assistant Sarah. "Miss Reed." Sarah's professional voice came through. Even at 9 p.m., she was always on standby. "Sarah, contact the legal team. I want the final divorce settlement on my desk by morning." Evelyn's voice had reverted to the cool, decisive tone of a professional. "And I need the records of Michael Miller's money transfers to Chloe Sullivan and a copy of the apartment lease he took out for her. I want everything you've gathered." Her voice was especially clear in the enclosed elevator, each word like a steel ball hitting ice. "And pull out the prenuptial agreement Michael and I signed 2 years ago. Prepare to file." Sarah was clearly surprised for a moment on the other end, but her voice was soon filled with suppressed excitement and efficiency. "Understood, Miss Reed. I'll handle it immediately. All the evidence has been backed up, including the dashcam footage from his car that you asked me to save. It contains their entire conversation. It'll be more than enough to make him suffer in court." "Excellent." Evelyn stepped out of the elevator, swiped her keycard, and opened the door to the suite. "Have everything on my desk by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks for working late tonight. I'll triple your overtime." "Thank you, Miss Reed. It's my honor to serve you, especially for this." Sarah hung up quicker than usual, eager to begin the task of compiling the evidence that would destroy a cheating husband. Evelyn tossed her phone onto the sofa and kicked off her heels. Her bare feet sank into the soft wool carpet. There were no dramatic tears, no reaching for a bottle of wine. In a crisis, her professional instincts always took over. The top priority was always to minimize losses and launch a counterattack. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out over the vast, glittering expanse of the New York City nightscape. Many people thought she was a fool, blinded by love for marrying Michael, a man so beneath her. The truth was, she was just busy. Too busy to cultivate a relationship with an equal. She thought that by marrying an ordinary man, she could have a peaceful home. But now that the ordinary man had decided he was no longer content with being ordinary, it was time to replace him. Assets. A contemptuous smile touched Evelyn's lips. As a veteran investment banker, she had set up the most rigorous asset protection for herself long before the marriage. Family trusts, offshore accounts, and a detailed prenuptial agreement that even specified post-marital asset appreciation. Michael thought her $3 million salary was marital property. What a dream! The bulk of her income came in the form of consulting fees and bonuses paid into a private company registered in her name. While she paid for all their living expenses, that was consumption, not asset accumulation. The only thing Michael might get from this divorce was probably a few pieces of antique furniture whose value he didn't even know. Buzz. The phone on the sofa vibrated again. This time it was her best friend Olivia. As soon as Evelyn answered Olivia's signature, vibrant laugh erupted before she could even speak. "Girl, I just heard you went to the Crown and absolutely demolished that psycho mother-in-law and her foxy little mistress. And you blocked Michael. Is it true? If you've really come to your senses, I'm popping a bottle of champagne right now." "News travels fast," Evelyn said, walking to the minibar and pouring a glass of water. "It's true. I'm filing for divorce." "Yes! You go, girl!" Olivia practically shouted. "I've been telling you for ages that scumbag Michael wasn't good enough for you, living off you and daring to throw a fit. And his mother is a complete monster. Divorce him. Absolutely. Do you need a lawyer? I'll lend you my firm's entire legal department. Pick any of the best divorce attorneys in New York." "No need. My team is more than capable," Evelyn said, taking a sip of water. Her expression softened. "But there is one thing I need you to do. Anything. Just name it." "Spread a rumor for me," Evelyn said, her eyes narrowing as she watched the stream of headlights below. "That Evelyn Reed is struggling with domestic issues and it might affect her performance on the Olympus project." Olivia paused for a beat, then caught on. "You're fishing. Seeing how Michael will react when he thinks you're vulnerable? Or are you testing Sterling Enterprises' resolve?" both Evelyn said coldly. "And who knows what other rats it might draw out of the woodwork." After hanging up, Evelyn didn't rest. She opened her laptop, the blue light of the screen reflecting on her beautiful but cold face. The document title read, "Project Olympus, Key Risk Assessment for a $10 billion merger." This was her most important project of the year, involving over $30 billion in capital. If she pulled it off, her position in the industry would be unshakable. She would be a legend. Michael Miller, he was just a bad debt on the balance sheet of her life. It was time to write him off. Losing precious sleep over him wasn't worth it. At the same time, in the Miller family's luxury apartment, the atmosphere was suffocating. Sharon was slumped on the sofa, clutching her chest and groaning. On the table beside her, the spurned mahogany box sat like a silent mockery. That Evelyn Reed. So out of control. "How could she humiliate me like that in front of everyone?" Sharon whined, glaring at her son. "Michael, look at your wife. What kind of behavior is that? I'm her elder. What's so wrong with asking her to give up her seat? Chloe is such a sweet girl. Why is she so determined to bully her?" Chloe was perched on a small nearby chair, her eyes red, sniffling, quietly. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Miller. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have gone. And I shouldn't have sat there. Evelyn must be angry because of me. Maybe I should call her and apologize. Apologize for what Chloe's words only fueled Sharon's anger. She grabbed Chloe's hand. "You did nothing wrong. It's her fault. So petty and jealous. Michael, stop calling her. Let her stew for a few days." I refuse to believe it. A 30-year-old woman threatening divorce. What's she going to do? After a few days, she'll come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. Michael clutched his phone, running a frustrated hand through his hair. The 74th call went straight to voicemail. His text messages were marked with a damning red exclamation point. "Mom, can you please be quiet for a minute?" he finally snapped. "Do you know how much that brooch cost? $150,000. And she just threw it away. That means she's serious this time. $150, 000. Sharon's eyes went wide, and she greedily stroked the mahogany box. That ungrateful. Well, she gave it to me, so it's mine now. At least she has that much sense. The point isn't the brooch. Michael paced the living room anxiously. She blocked me. On everything. If she really files for divorce. He looked around the lavishly decorated apartment, thought of the Porsche in the garage. Without Evelyn, all of this would disappear. So what? Sharon waved her hand dismissively. Let her divorce you. My Michael is handsome, a senior manager at a big company. Finding another wife is no problem. Besides, legally in a divorce, assets are split 50/50. She makes so much money you could get tens of millions. Then you can marry Chloe with that money. It'd be much better than living under her thumb, wouldn't it? At the mention of tens of millions, Chloe's previously downcast eyes lit up. She shyly glanced at Michael. An idea flashed through Michael's mind. Right. Evelyn was rich. Even in a divorce, he could get a massive settlement. With that kind of money, why did he need to cater to her? The thought made Michael's anxiety fade, replaced by a secret greed and misplaced confidence. Fine. Let her stew, Michael said through gritted teeth. I'll go to her office tomorrow. I'd like to see her dare to kick me her own husband out in front of all her employees. The next morning, in the heart of New York's financial district, Evelyn, dressed in a crisp white power suit and flawless makeup, strode into her company's lobby. The entire hall seemed to brighten with her presence. Good morning, Miss Reed. Morning, Miss Reed. Employees paused to greet her, their eyes filled with awe. Evelyn gave a slight nod, walking with an unwavering pace toward her private elevator. Sarah was already waiting by the door, holding a thick stack of documents. Miss Reed, here is everything you requested, Sarah said in a low voice, handing her a blue folder. All of Michael's infidelity evidence and the copy of the prenuptial agreement. The legal team has also drafted the divorce papers. They are ready to be served at any time. Good work, Evelyn said, taking the folder without a glance and tucking it under her arm. Put that aside for now. Inform the project team we're having a meeting in conference room 1-10 minutes about the second round financing for Project Olympus. Yes, ma'am. A look of admiration flashed across Sarah's face. This was Evelyn Reed. Even when her marriage was imploding when it came to work, she was a precision instrument. No emotion could cloud her judgment. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense. Project Olympus had complex stakeholder interests and several senior executives were at a loggerheads. The data on the PowerPoint slides was a dizzying array of red and green. The risk is too high. Their bottom line is non-negotiable. They're squeezing our profit margin to almost nothing, a VP said, wiping sweat from his brow. If we don't take it, our competitor will. We'll lose 3% of market share, another director countered. Amidst the debate, Evelyn remained silent. She held a pen in her hand, her cool gaze fixed on the K-line chart on the large screen. Suddenly, the pen in her hand stopped. Click. A soft, sharp sound. The conference room immediately fell silent. Increase the discount rate on the cash flow projection in the third spreadsheet by 0.5%. Evelyn's voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that could not be defied. And I want a deep dive into the hidden debt of the target company's subsidiary. Focus on 3 specific overseas transfers they made this quarter. The team was momentarily stunned, then fingers flew across keyboards. 2 minutes later, the VP gasped. My God, Miss Reed, you're a genius. Using your calculation, their valuation is inflated by $2 billion. And those 3 transfers, they're highly suspicious. They look like related party transactions. The room filled with awed murmurs. The way everyone looked at Evelyn shifted from respect to outright worship. With a single glance, she had seen through the deception hidden in a multi-billion-dollar project. This was the capability a $3 million salary bought. Evelyn closed her folder and stood up. Redraft the proposal. We're lowering our offer by 15%. If they refuse, let them know. Sterling Enterprises is also very interested in this project. They'll know what to do. With that, Evelyn walked out of the conference room, followed by the admiring gazes of her team. The sound of her heels on the marble floor was firm and decisive. She had just returned to her office and hadn't even had a sip of water when the internal line from the front desk rang. Miss Reed, we have a problem. The young receptionist's voice was panicked. There are some people downstairs causing a huge disturbance. They claim to be your family and are demanding to see you. Security can't stop them. The older woman, she's lying on the floor and rolling around. Evelyn's hand holding the phone tightened, her eyes instantly turning icy. Family. An older woman in a tacky sequin dress, a young woman and a man in glasses. Yes, that's them. The receptionist was almost in tears. The grandmother has a megaphone and is shouting that you're ungrateful, driving your mother-in-law to her death and trying to ruin your husband. It's lunchtime, a huge crowd has gathered and people are filming. Evelyn let out a cold laugh. So they had come. With Michael unable to reach her, the loose-lipped Sharon couldn't hold back. She hadn't expected them to be foolish enough to cause a scene in the middle of the financial district. Did they think this was a flea market where they could get what they wanted by throwing a tantrum? Stay calm, Evelyn's voice was soothing. Tell security not to forcibly remove them, just maintain order. And have Sarah meet me downstairs with the USB drive I prepared. Yes, miss. Read. Hanging up, Evelyn walked to the full-length mirror and adjusted her collar. The woman in the mirror had perfect makeup and sharp eyes, with no trace of the fear one might expect from a so-called family scandal. Since they were so eager to offer up their faces for slapping, she wouldn't be polite. The downstairs lobby was chaos. Sharon was splayed on the floor, wailing a portable megaphone, amplifying her shrill voice to a deafening volume. Oh, the injustice. Everyone come and see. This is the multi-million-dollar executive Evelyn Reed, so glamorous on the outside but rotten to the core. My son, who I raised with my own blood, sweat, and tears, married this heartless monster. She's cheating on him with another man. And now that she's found someone new, she wants to abandon her husband. She's trying to kick a poor widow and her son out onto the street. Michael stood nearby. Though embarrassed, he thought of the tens of millions his mother had mentioned and played his part, a weary and sad expression on his face. Chloe perfectly embodied the role of the wronged young woman supporting Sharon and dabbing at her eyes as she faced the crowd. Missus. Miller, please don't cry. You have to think of your health. I'm sure Evelyn is just confused right now. She's so successful she probably looks down on ordinary people like us. The crowd of onlookers grew their whispers, turning into judgments. Wow, isn't that Evelyn Reed, the goddess of investment banking? I can't believe her private life is like this. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Trying to evict her own mother-in-law. Look at that poor old woman. Guess it's not easy being married to a powerful woman. The tide of public opinion was turning in Sharon's favor. Just then, the automatic glass doors of the lobby slid open. The crisp sound of heels cut through the noise. Evelyn appeared flanked by 4 security guards and her assistant Sarah. She stood backlit, her posture perfect, her presence so overwhelming that the surrounding chatter immediately died down. Seeing Evelyn, Sharon's energy surged. She scrambled up from the floor and tried to rush forward. Evelyn Reed, you heartless thing, you finally show your face. Everyone look, this is the homewrecker. Before she could get close, 2 tall security guards blocked her path like twin towers. Ma'am, please calm down. Calm down. You dare tell me to calm down, Sharon shrieked, jumping up and down. You're the one meeting other men trying to divorce my son and trying to take all the money. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? I'm telling you, if you don't give us an explanation today, I'm not leaving this place. Michael also stepped forward, his expression one of deep pain. Evelyn, I know you're under a lot of stress from work. That's why I've always put up with your temper. But on Mom's 65th birthday to just walk out like that in front of everyone, it really hurt her. Even if you found someone else, we could have sat down and talked about it. Why did you have to be so cruel? His words skillfully painted Evelyn as a hot-tempered, unfilial, and unfaithful person, adding fuel to the fire. The onlookers gasped their gazes toward Evelyn, now filled with contempt. Evelyn was so angry she almost laughed. She scanned the crowd, her eyes finally landing on Michael's hypocritical face. Michael Miller, do you know what happens to liars? You should be careful your tongue doesn't rot. She turned slightly and nodded at Sarah. Since everyone is so interested in the truth, let's give them a show. Sarah stepped forward, holding a tablet connected to the massive outdoor LED screen on the building's facade. It was a screen Evelyn's company leased for project promotions, usually showing financial news. Today it would be a public execution stage. The screen flickered and then lit up with a clear image security camera footage from the Crown's private dining hall. On the screen, a smiling Sharon was pulling Chloe to the head of the table, whispering, "Chloe, you're so sweet. You sit here with me. This seat is for family." Michael stood by, meekly avoidant. Then Evelyn walked in, saw the scene, and without any argument, calmly placed the expensive gift aside and turned to leave. The scene changed to another video. This time it was dashcam footage from Michael's car dated 2 weeks prior. The audio was crystal clear. Michael, Chloe's coquettish voice purred. "That old hag is so obsessed with work she has no idea how to be a woman. You deserve so much better. Just be patient, baby," came Michael's greasy, greedy voice in reply. "Once I trick her into putting a few more assets in my name, I'll drop the bomb. Then we can use her money to travel the world." The The video even showed the two of them kissing in the car. Though the light was dim, their faces were unmistakable. The crowd erupted. Whoa, what a plot twist. So the man was the one cheating, and he brought his mistress to his mom's birthday party to provoke his wife. What a scumbag. That old woman is disgusting. It's her son's fault, but she's blaming her daughter-in-law. He was planning to live off his wife's money with his mistress and steal her assets. Complete trash. The onlookers who had just been sympathizing with Sharon now turned on the trio with fury. Some were even looking for things to throw from their bags. Sharon was completely stunned. She never imagined Evelyn would have such conclusive evidence, let alone the guts to display it publicly. That's fake. It's photoshopped, she stammered, flailing her hands. Don't believe it. She works in finance. She can forge anything with money. Forged Evelyn smiled coldly and took a stack of printed bank records from Sarah, tossing them into the air. Sheets of A4 papers scattered like snowflakes landing at the feet of the crowd. These are the transaction records from the last 2 years, showing how Michael Miller used his position to embezzle our joint funds to buy luxury goods, lease an apartment, and even pay for Chloe Sullivan's plastic surgery. Evelyn's voice rang out, clear and powerful. Every transaction is stamped by the bank. Feel free to verify. Someone picked up a sheet. My God, he spent $5,000 in 1 month. The note says, for baby's new bag. How much does this guy even make? Michael's face was ashen. His knees buckled and he almost collapsed. It was over. Completely over. His reputation, his job, his entire foothold in this city all crumbled at that moment. Chloe was even more terrified, desperately using her handbag to hide her face, afraid of being recognized and doxxed online. Evelyn walked down the steps. The sound of her heels was like a countdown to Michael's ruin. She stopped in front of him, her eyes icy as she looked down at him. Michael Miller, my annual salary is $3 million. Do I need to trick you to get what I want? You, on the other hand, used my money to support your mistress and tried to frame me. Have you no shame? Michael's lips trembled. He couldn't say a word. Evelyn then turned to the still quivering Sharon. You call me unfilial. That brooch was worth $150,000. A gift I went out of my way to have blessed for you. But since you feel I'm so ungrateful, she turned to her assistant. Sarah, contact the auction house. We're recalling the gift. It was never officially transferred, and it was purchased with income from my premarital assets. You dare, Sharon shrieked at the thought of losing the brooch. It was her nest egg for the rest of her life. Just watch me, Evelyn said coldly. Furthermore, I've already filed a lawsuit for defamation, public disturbance, and potentially bigamy. The 3 of you can just wait for your summons. With that, Evelyn paid the trio no more attention. She turned to the security guards. If they cause any more trouble, report them to the police immediately. And save a copy of this surveillance footage. It will make for excellent evidence in court. Yes, ma'am, the guards replied in unison. Evelyn turned with Sarah and walked back into the building, leaving a decisive, powerful silhouette for the crowd. Behind her, the sound of the onlookers' curses raining down on the Miller family, and Sharon's desperate sobs could be heard. Back in her office, Sarah's face was flushed with excitement. Miss Reed, that was amazing. You should have seen that old woman's face at the end. She looked like she'd swallowed a fly. The video has already gone viral online. Public opinion is completely on your side. Evelyn sat down in her large executive chair, her expression still calm. This was an expected victory, nothing worth over-celebrating. This is just the beginning, Evelyn said, opening her laptop and pulling up the Project Olympus file. For someone like Michael, losing his reputation and money was a fate worse than death. But it wasn't enough. Her fingers tapped the keyboard a few times, sending an email. Sarah, schedule a meeting for me with the CEO of Michael Miller's company. Tell them I'd like to discuss a potential business partnership. But first I'd like to understand their company policy on employee ethics and risk management. Sarah stiffened, then her eyes lit up with understanding. Right away, Miss Reed. This was adding insult to injury. You're truly ruthless, Miss Reed. Michael's company was a small firm that relied on a few major clients. If they learned that Michael had offended an industry titan like Evelyn Reed and was embroiled in a financial and moral scandal, they would have no choice but to fire him to protect themselves. Just business, Evelyn waved her hand, her focus already back on the dense data on her screen. In this high-risk world, mercy was the greatest form of cruelty to oneself. Since Michael chose betrayal, he had to be prepared for the devastating consequences. Downstairs, the crowd finally dispersed. Michael sat on the edge of a planter, completely dazed, his tie askew as if he'd been in a fight. Sharon was still muttering curses nearby. That damn Evelyn Reed. How could she be so heartless? My brooch, my money. Chloe stood to the side, looking at the pathetic mother-son duo, no longer bothering to hide her contempt. She thought Michael could handle Evelyn or at least secure a massive settlement. Now, not only was there no money, but she was also caught up in the scandal. Several colleagues had already texted her asking if she was the shameless mistress in the video. Her reputation at the company was ruined. "Michael Miller, you said you could handle her," Chloe finally shrieked. "Now look, the whole world knows I'm a mistress. How am I supposed to show my face anywhere?" Michael jumped to his feet, glaring at her with bloodshot eyes. "You dare blame me? If you hadn't insisted on sitting in that seat at dinner, would any of this have happened? My fault." Chloe pointed at herself in disbelief. "Your mother told me to sit there. It's all because you're incompetent. You can't even control your own wife. You had to lean on me. Now that things have gone wrong, it's my fault. Shut up." Michael stood up and raised his hand as if to strike her. "Go on, hit me." "I dare you," Chloe said, jutting her face forward. "Michael Miller, if I happen to be pregnant with your child, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." Even though it was a fabrication, the mention of a child made Michael's hand freeze in midair. Just then, his phone rang. It was the head of HR from his company. A sense of doom churned in Michael's stomach. He answered with a trembling hand. "Michael Miller, in light of your serious personal misconduct, which has had a severe negative impact on the company's reputation, the board has decided to suspend you from your duties effective immediately. Please return to the office to hand over your work. We will also be conducting a full audit of all accounts you have managed." The call ended with a dull click. Michael's hand went limp. The phone fell to the pavement, the screen shattering. Suspension. Audit. It was over. The fake receipts he had submitted to reimburse Chloe's expenses. They would never stand up to scrutiny. If proven, that was embezzlement. That was jail time. A wave of unprecedented terror washed over Michael. His legs gave out and he sank to the ground, his eyes vacant. Not far from him, Chloe watched this scene unfold, her eyes darting quickly. Michael was clearly finished. She had to find a way out for herself. Maybe that USB drive can be used for something else, she thought. Chloe looked at Michael's slumped form. The last trace of affection in her eyes rapidly cooled, replaced by cold calculation. She felt the backup USB drive in her purse. It was her insurance policy in case Michael ever tried to abandon her. It contained all the evidence of his infidelity over the past year, all the times he had used the company card to please her, all the kickbacks he'd received. It was originally leveraged to force him to marry her. Now it was her last lifeline. Chloe's voice was suddenly sharp and cold. Michael, still reeling from the shock of his suspension, looked up blankly. "Chloe, what are we going to do?" "They're going to audit the books. Those receipts. Those receipts were signed by you. What do they have to do with me?" Chloe took a step back, crossing her arms and looking down on him. "Michael Miller, my career is gone, and the apartment belongs to Evelyn Reed. What do you have left? Nothing but a mountain of debt." Michael was stunned, unable to believe this was the same sweet, helpless girl who used to worship him. "Chloe, what are you saying? We're in this together." "Who's in this with you?" Chloe sneered, not bothering to hide her contempt. "I'm the victim here. An innocent young woman who was deceived and emotionally manipulated by her married boss. Since you can't give me a future, let's settle the present." She held out her hand. "For the last year, I've been with you for my emotional distress and for my wasted youth. Compensation. A total of $50,000. Give me the money, and I'll disappear. I'll never bother you again." Sharon, who had been listening blankly, shot up as if electrocuted at the mention of money. $50,000. "You shameless hussy. Are you crazy? You seduced my son, and now you're demanding money? I'll kill you." Sharon rushed at her, but Chloe easily dodged. No longer playing the victim, Chloe pulled a small recording pen from her purse and waved it. "Don't waste your energy, old lady. I also have recordings of Michael using company money to buy you that massage chair and pay for the repairs on your old house. If you don't pay up, I'll send this evidence straight to his company's audit team. Then it won't just be a suspension. You can look forward to visiting your son in prison." Her words struck Michael like a lightning bolt. He trembled, pointing a shaking finger at Chloe. You planned this from the beginning. What choice did I have? A woman like Evelyn Reed is too powerful. To play in her league, I needed an insurance policy," Chloe said, primping her hair and reverting to a smug attitude. "I'll give you 3 days, $50,000 in my account, or we both go down together." With that, she turned and walked away from the mess, ignoring Sharon's wails and Michael's desperate gasps, leaving Michael and his mother like two piles of trash abandoned in the glittering financial plaza. Meanwhile, on the 38th floor of the office building, an atmosphere of quiet victory prevailed. Evelyn stood by the window looking down at the ant-like crowd scattering below a cup of black coffee in her hand, her face impassive. "Miss Reed, that was a magnificent victory," Sarah said, still giddy with excitement. "The PR team says public opinion is completely on our side. Several media outlets want an exclusive interview about how a modern woman should handle a marital crisis." "Decline them all," Evelyn said, turning and placing the cup on her desk. "I don't need to sell a sob story or build a personal brand. I need results." "Of course." Sarah immediately switched to a serious tone, pulling out her scheduler. "Regarding Project Olympus, the key meeting is at 2 p.m. this afternoon. It was originally scheduled with the VP of Sterling Enterprises, but we just received notice that the chairman, Mr. Alexander Sterling himself, will be attending in person." At the mention of that name, Evelyn's hand, which had been flipping through a file, paused. Alexander Sterling, the legend who had returned from Wall Street. Known for his ruthless methods and unparalleled vision, he had tripled Sterling Enterprises' market value in just 3 years. Rumor had it he was cold and difficult to work with, but held immense respect for those with proven talent. "Mr. Sterling is coming himself," Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "It seems he's very serious about this project." "Yes." And Sarah hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I've heard that Mr. Sterling was already familiar with your work from your time overseas. He specifically requested to meet with the head of the project in person." A spark of challenge flickered in Evelyn's eyes. Compared to dealing with a man like Michael, a high-stakes negotiation with a worthy opponent was what truly excited her. "Prepare the materials. We leave in 10 minutes. 2 p.m. Sterling Enterprises headquarters top-floor conference room." Evelyn and her team walked in punctually. She had changed into a sleek white pantsuit, her hair pulled back in an elegant chignon revealing her long, graceful neck. She exuded a cool, authoritative presence. Across the long conference table sat a man in a dark gray bespoke suit. Unlike the others, he wasn't sitting stiffly upright, but was leaning back in his chair, casually toying with a fountain pen. At the sound of the door opening, he slowly looked up. Their eyes met. For a brief second, Evelyn felt her heart skip a beat. The man had strong, defined features. His deep brown eyes were like a bottomless pool, analytical and sharp, but as they met, hers a barely perceptible smile touched their corners. "Miss Reed, it's an honor to finally meet you," Alexander Sterling said, standing up and extending a hand with gentlemanly grace. "Mr. Sterling, the pleasure is all mine," Evelyn replied, shaking his hand. His palm was broad and dry, the grip firm and respectful. As the meeting began, Evelyn demonstrated the absolute mastery that had made her a top partner. From macroeconomic analysis to project risk assessment and detailed financial modeling, she spoke fluently the data at her fingertips, her logic irrefutable. She deftly handled several sharp questions from the Sterling team and even turned the tables by pointing out flaws in their existing proposal. The room was filled only with her clear, powerful voice and the rustle of papers. Alexander remained mostly silent, just watching her. His gaze was focused and deep, as if he weren't observing a business partner but appraising a rare masterpiece. As the meeting drew to a close, Evelyn closed her file and looked confidently at the head of the table. "Mr. Sterling, this is our proposal. I trust you won't find a firm in this city better equipped to handle Project Olympus." A short silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Alexander, awaiting his final decision. He put down his pen, a faint smile on his lips. "Miss Reed, your proposal is indeed flawless. However," his tone shifted, his gaze becoming more meaningful. "I hear you're currently dealing with some personal matters. I need to know if this will affect the project's timeline. Sterling Enterprises can't afford a partner who is distracted by domestic issues." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Was he questioning her professionalism, or was he testing her limits? The atmosphere in the room froze. Sarah clutched her pen nervously. But Evelyn just smiled, a light, unruffled expression. "Mr. Sterling, your information is accurate. But I must make a correction. I am not dealing with personal matters. I am liquidating a bad asset." She looked him straight in the eye, her gaze unwavering. "Just as a successful project requires divesting from non-performing assets, so does a successful life. A timely write-off is essential for future growth. As for whether it will affect my work," she gestured to the flawless presentation on the screen, "I believe the last 90 minutes have already provided the best answer. A deep look of admiration filled Alexander's eyes, liquidating a bad asset. Well said. He began to clap. Miss Reed, you live up to your reputation. We would be delighted to work with you. Following his lead, the room erupted in thunderous applause. Evelyn let out a quiet breath, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. After the meeting, as Evelyn was about to leave, Alexander stopped her. Miss Reed, if you're not busy, might I treat you to dinner tonight? There are a few details I'd like to discuss one-on-one. Evelyn's first instinct was to refuse, but considering the deal had just been sealed, she knew that relationship management was key. She nodded. I'd be honored. Meanwhile, on another side of the city, Michael Miller was hitting one dead end after another. To raise Chloe's blackmail money, he called every friend in his contact list. Hey Mark, it's Michael. Listen, I'm in a bit of a tight spot, was wondering if you could lend me some. Click. Yo, Steve, remember that project last year? I really helped you out. Mike, you know the market. Times are tough for me too. Gotta go. The so-called friends who used to drink with him and pat him on the back now avoided him like the plague, having heard the news of his suspension and falling out with Evelyn Reed. This was reality. Michael sat in a dark, dingy rental room, not daring to face Sharon's nagging. He stared at the endless payment reminder messages on his phone, clawing at his hair in despair. His credit cards were maxed out. Payday loan apps rejected him. Was he really going to have to wait for Chloe to report him and go to jail? Just then, his phone pinged. A new friend request on a messaging app. The profile picture was black. The note contained only 2 words, get even. On a strange impulse, Michael accepted. A message came through immediately. Want revenge on Evelyn Reed, want to take back what's yours. Michael's fingers trembled as he typed a reply. Who is this? The reply was swift. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I know Evelyn Reed is having dinner with the chairman of Sterling Enterprises at Cloud9 tonight. This is your last chance. Either beg her for forgiveness or ruin her. A photo followed showing Evelyn and Alexander walking out of an office building side by side. They looked like the perfect power couple. Alexander was even holding the car door open for her. The image stabbed at Michael's eyes. Jealousy, rage, and bitterness roiled in his chest, twisting his face into a grotesque mask. Why? Why was his life in ruins while that woman could so casually move on to a bigger, better prospect? You did this to me, Evelyn Reed. Michael stared at the screen, a crazed light in his eyes. He fumbled in a drawer and pulled out a box cutter he used for opening packages. Slipping it into his pocket, he pulled on a baseball cap and melted into the night. At Cloud9 restaurant, the soft strains of a violin filled the air. It was one of the city's top French restaurants with a stunning view of the river. Alexander was elegantly cutting his steak, making light conversation. I hear you're a wine connoisseur, Miss Reed. I happen to have a few bottles of Romane Conti in my cellar. I'll have them sent over for you to sample sometime. Evelyn took a sip of red wine and politely declined. That's very generous of you, Mr. Sterling, but I couldn't possibly accept. Besides, for a newly single woman, accepting such an expensive gift might not be appropriate. Alexander put down his silverware and dabbed his lips with a napkin. His gaze was intense. It is precisely because you are newly single, Miss Reed, that I have a reason to give you gifts. Don't you agree? His words were direct and bold. Evelyn was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. Mr. Sterling, are you hitting on me? And what if I am? Alexander leaned forward slightly, his powerful presence enveloping her. An exceptional woman like you deserves to be treated better. You shouldn't be held back by garbage. Evelyn's heart fluttered. She hadn't expected him to be so straightforward. Just as she was about to reply, a commotion erupted at the restaurant's entrance. Sir, you can't go in there, sir, a waiter's urgent voice cried. A man with disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes brandishing a gleaming box cutter burst into the dining room. It was Michael. His eyes immediately locked onto the radiant Evelyn by the window and the distinguished man sitting across from her. The stark contrast shattered his last shred of sanity. Evelyn Reed, you bitch, cheating on me with another man, Michael roared, charging toward them like a mad dog. The blade was aimed straight at Evelyn's face. Look out, it all happened too fast. All Evelyn could see was the glint of the blade as her body froze. At the last second, a tall figure lunged in front of her. Swish. The sound of a blade tearing through fabric and flesh was shockingly loud in the quiet restaurant. Alexander let out a pained grunt. With his other hand, he chopped down on Michael's wrist, sending the box cutter clattering to the floor. He then kicked out, sending Michael flying into a nearby table, shattering bottles and glasses. Security, call the police. Alexander roared, his voice uncharacteristically furious. Evelyn, still in shock, looked up. Blood was rapidly soaking the sleeve of his white shirt, a horrifying red stain spreading. Mr. Sterling, you're hurt. Evelyn's face went pale as she rushed to support him. But Alexander seemed to feel no pain. He wrapped his other arm around her protectively. Are you all right? He didn't get you, did he? He asked, his eyes filled with desperate concern. Looking into his eyes, Evelyn's long-steeled heart trembled violently. Michael, pinned to the floor by security guards, saw this and let out a desperate, crazed laugh. Ha ha ha, you're worried about him, Evelyn Reed. You're actually worried about another man. You cheated too. You're just like me. You're dirty too. Evelyn turned her head. Her gaze toward the man on the floor was as cold as if she were looking at a corpse. If there had been any lingering shred of pity for their past, Michael had just personally destroyed it. You had a chance to walk away. You chose this path. This is no longer just a divorce. This is attempted assault. Michael Miller, I hope you enjoy the rest of your life in a prison cell. 10 minutes later, outside, Cloud 9 police sirens tore through the night. Several armed officers stormed the restaurant and subdued the screaming Michael. The cold click of handcuffs sealed his fate. Let me go. I was framed. It was a domestic dispute. You can't arrest me, Michael struggled, his face pressed against the cold marble floor, his features twisted demonically. Evelyn Reed, you venomous snake! You'll rot in hell! Evelyn stood watching coldly, not even looking at him directly. She turned her full attention on Alexander's bleeding arm, her voice trembling slightly. Sarah, cooperate with the police, provide the security footage. We're pressing charges for attempted murder. And call an ambulance. Right now. We don't need an ambulance, it'll be too slow, Alexander said. Though his face was pale, he was surprisingly calm. He gently patted Evelyn's shoulder with his uninjured hand. My driver is downstairs. Let's go to the nearest private hospital. Evelyn pressed her lips together and silently supported his good arm. I'm coming with you. The emergency room was filled with the smell of disinfectant. When the doctor cut away Alexander's shirt sleeve, a gash nearly 4 inches long was revealed. The cut was deep, the flesh torn. Evelyn gasped at the gruesome sight, her heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand. If that blade had hit her face, the consequences would have been unimaginable. This is going to sting, Mr. Sterling. It needs stitches, the doctor said, wincing sympathetically. But Alexander didn't flinch. His gaze was fixed on Evelyn, who stood beside him, pale and trembling. He managed a faint smile. Miss Reed, don't look like I'm about to lose an arm. A small wound in exchange for your safety. That's a bargain. Evelyn's head was spinning. Her eyes met his deep sea-like gaze. There was no self-congratulation, no calculation, only raw sincerity and palpable concern. Alexander, she said, her voice hoarse as she took a deep breath. Why would you do that? That was a knife, not a toy. For a moment there, Michael really wanted to kill me. Alexander looked at her, his expression softening. If I had stopped to think to weigh the pros and cons, I probably wouldn't have. But in that moment, it was instinct. Instinct. The word struck Evelyn's heart hard, creating a crack in the fortress she had built around it. Throughout her marriage, Michael had always been the one hiding behind her, needing her protection. Faced with trouble, he retreated. Faced with blame, he deflected. She had become so used to being the soldier on the front lines that she had forgotten she too could be protected. Just then, Sarah rushed in, breaking the delicate atmosphere between them. Miss Reed, Mr. Sterling. She glanced at Alexander's bandaged arm with respect, then reported Michael Miller has been detained. The police have reviewed the surveillance footage. Given that he was aiming for your face and neck, they are classifying it as attempted murder. Even with the best lawyer, he's looking at a minimum of 10 years. She paused, her face twisting in disgust. Sharon Miller and Chloe Sullivan are causing a scene at the police station, claiming Michael has a history of mental illness and trying to get him released. Sharon tried to force her way into the hospital to beg you for mercy, but was stopped by security. Evelyn let out a cold laugh, a murderous glint in her eyes. Mental illness. Creative. Tell the lawyers not to accept any form of settlement. As for Sharon, if she harasses me again, sue her for public disturbance and have her locked up with her son. Understood. Sarah nodded, then looked at Alexander. Mr. Sterling, given what happened tonight, the signing ceremony for Project Olympus was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Considering your injury, perhaps we should postpone it. No postponement, 2 voices said in unison. Evelyn looked at Alexander, frowning. You have 12 stitches. The doctor said you need to rest. This is not the time to talk about work. But Alexander was resolute. Project Olympus involves multiple stakeholders. A single day's delay invites more risk. Besides, he said, looking at Evelyn meaningfully, it's my left arm that's injured. My right hand has no problem signing. More importantly, his gaze deepened. I don't want anyone to think that Evelyn Reed's business partner would back down because of a minor incident. I want all of New York to know Sterling Enterprises is your most steadfast ally. Evelyn was speechless. Even while injured, his first thought was of her professional standing and the stability of their project. This sense of partnership, of fighting side by side as equals, was something she had never experienced. After a moment of silence, Evelyn conceded, though her tone was still firm. The signing can happen tomorrow, but the venue is changed to this hospital. I'll have my legal team bring the documents here. A smile spread across Alexander's face, his eyes filled with affection. As you wish, Miss Reed. The next morning in the VIP suite of a private hospital, a unique signing ceremony took place. There were no flowers, no red carpet, no flashing cameras, but the key executives from both companies were present, creating a solemn and tense atmosphere. When Alexander fluently signed his name with his uninjured right hand and stamped the Sterling Enterprises seal on the contract, the weight that had been pressing on Evelyn's shoulders finally lifted. The $10 billion project was officially launched. This signified that after liquidating her draining marriage, her career had not only survived but had soared to new heights. After the executives left, only Evelyn and Alexander remained in the room. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting a warm glow on Alexander's pale face. Thank you, Evelyn said, looking at him, her voice sincere. For last night and for today. If it's just verbal thanks, I don't need it, Alexander said, leaning back against his pillow. But if Miss Reed wouldn't mind, could you peel an apple for me? It's a bit difficult with one hand. Evelyn smiled and began skillfully peeling an apple from the fruit basket. I've always wondered, Alexander said, suddenly watching her. A woman as intelligent and discerning as you. What did you ever see in Michael Miller? Evelyn's hand paused for a fraction of a second, then continued moving. Her voice was calm, as if telling someone else's story. I was young. I mistook obedience and compliance for love. I thought that by marrying an ordinary man, I could have an ordinary, simple life. It was only later that I realized, a worthless marriage doesn't bring you stability. It just drags you down. She finished peeling the apple, cut it into slices, and handed it to him. But I should thank him. He made me realize what I truly want. And now, Alexander took the apple but didn't eat it, his gaze fixed on her. What kind of partner do you want now, Evelyn? The air in the room became thick with unspoken meaning. Evelyn met his unabashed gaze. Mr. Sterling, is this an interview? She asked, half joking. No, Alexander said, putting down the apple and leaning forward, closing the distance between them. It's a self-recommendation. His tone was unusually serious, shedding the ruthlessness he usually wore in the boardroom. Evelyn, I admire your talent, I respect your integrity, and my heart aches for your strength. I know you just ended a terrible marriage and might not trust in relationships right now. That's fine. I'm not in a hurry. He held out his uninjured right hand, palm up. I'm not asking for an immediate answer, nor do I expect you to depend on me. I just hope that on the road ahead, whether it's the storms of the business world or the trials of life, you will grant me the privilege of standing by your side. As your equal. As your partner. Will you give me a chance to earn you? The sun outside was bright. Evelyn looked at the strong hand offered to her. The image of him protecting her without hesitation, of him defending her in the conference room, flashed through her mind. This was the man she deserved. Not an emotional leech who only knew how to take, but a partner who understood her ambition, respected her soul, and was willing to shield her. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. It wasn't an explicit yes, but the warmth of his touch said everything. Alexander, she said, a smile finally reaching her eyes. A genuine, relaxed, and radiant smile, the first since her divorce. The probation period will be very strict. Are you ready? Alexander enveloped her hand in his, eyes dancing. At your service, my queen. While a new chapter was beginning for them, Michael Miller was experiencing his own personal hell in a holding cell. As a suspect in a violent crime, he was in a special ward. The iron doors were always locked, with only a small, high window letting in a sliver of light. Let me out! I was set up! It was a momentary lapse. I want to see my lawyer, Michael screamed, shaking the bars. Quiet down, a guard banged on the door with his baton. No one in here cares about your excuses. The evidence for attempted murder is solid. Get ready to rot in here. Michael slid to the floor, clutching his head. How had it come to this? Just a few days ago, he was the enviable Michael Miller, with a wife who earned millions and a beautiful young mistress. Now his wife was gone, his mistress had vanished, his job was lost, and he was facing a long prison sentence. "Mom, save me," he sobbed, snot and tears smearing his face. Unfortunately, his mother Sharon, the person he was counting on, was currently surrounded by loan sharks in front of her own house. They were the men Michael had borrowed from to buy Chloe bags. Now that he was locked up, the creditors had come for his next of kin. "Old lady, your son owes us 30 grand. With interest, that's 50,000. If you don't pay up today, we're taking this house tattooed," men yelled, banging on her door. Sharon cowered inside, too terrified to even scream. This was karma. For years, they had taken advantage of Evelyn's kindness and generosity, trampling on her dignity without a second thought. Now the consequences had come back like a boomerang, hitting them exactly where it hurt the most. 2 weeks later, Evelyn had just finished a long international video conference and was leaving the room, massaging her temples. Sarah immediately approached her, a strange expression on her face. "Miss Reed, there's someone waiting for you downstairs." Who? Evelyn took the glass of warm water Sarah handed her. "It's Michael Miller," Sarah whispered. "Security won't let him up, but he's been kneeling in the lobby for almost 2 hours. It's causing quite a scene. He says if he can't see you, he'll kneel there until he dies." Evelyn paused, a cold, ironic glint in her eye. Kneel until he dies. The old soft-hearted Evelyn might have felt a spark of pity, might have let him up just to keep up appearances. But the new Evelyn found it simply ridiculous. "Let him kneel," she said, turning back toward her office. "Tell security that if he obstructs business operations, they should call the police." "But Miss Reed," Sarah hesitated, following her. "It's closing time, a lot of employees are talking. And I hear he looks terrible. Someone took a video and put it online. Most of the comments are condemning him, but a few soft-hearted people are saying, 'You're being too cruel.'" Evelyn stopped and turned her gaze cold. "Cruel, Sarah. You need to remember this, mercy to your enemy is cruelty to yourself. But since he's so desperate to see me, let's grant him his wish." She straightened her impeccable suit, fully exuding her aura of authority, and headed for the lobby. During the evening rush hour, Michael Miller was kneeling on the polished marble floor of the corporate lobby. All his former arrogance was gone. The designer suit Evelyn had once bought him was now a rumpled, stained rag. He was unshaven, his eyes sunken. He looked 10 years older. Employees walked past, pointing and whispering. "Isn't that the cheating husband from last time? How can he be so shameless as to show his face? Here I heard he got fired and is drowning in debt. Serves him right. To have a wife like Reed and throw it all away for an intern. What an idiot." Michael heard the whispers, and shame burned him. But he didn't dare get up. This was his last chance. The past 2 weeks had been a fall from grace. He was detained for assault, then released on bail, but his company immediately fired him and blacklisted him throughout the industry for his embezzlement and misconduct. The loan sharks were even more terrifying. To pay them back, he sold his car and even stole the deed to Sharon's old house to use as collateral, but it was a drop in the bucket. And that damn Chloe had disappeared with his money, rumored to be working in some sleazy club down south. He had nothing left. He had no choice but to come back like a stray dog and beg Evelyn. Michael's eyes lit up as he saw the authoritative figure emerge from the elevator. He crawled forward on his knees. "Evelyn, you've finally come to see me." Evelyn stopped 3 meters away, looking down at him as if he were a piece of non-recyclable trash. "Michael Miller, if you're here to film a melodrama, you've picked the wrong audience." Her voice was quiet, but it had the authority to silence the bustling lobby. "Evelyn, I was wrong." "I was so wrong," Michael cried, tears streaming down his face. "I've had a lot of time to think. I was a fool. I was bewitched by that witch, Chloe. I've completely cut ties with her. All I can think about now is how good you were to me. Let's start over, please." He tried to grab the hem of her suit, but a security guard quickly stopped him. "Start over," Evelyn laughed as if she had heard the world's biggest joke. "Michael Miller, do you have amnesia? 2 weeks ago in that restaurant when you rushed at me with a knife, were you thinking about starting over then? Or does your starting over just mean finding an ATM to pay off your debts?" His true motives, exposed Michael's face, fell. "No, that's not it. I really love you, Evelyn. We were married for 3 years. For the sake of our past, please just give me one more chance. I swear I'll listen to you. I'll be your slave. Stop, Evelyn, cut him off coldly. Your love is too cheap for me to afford. And as for our 3 years, she took a step forward, the sound of her heels on the floor like blows to Michael's heart. On my mother-in-law's birthday, when I was being humiliated by everyone, when your mother was treating your mistress like a guest of honor, you stood by and said nothing. At that moment, our 3-year history died. Michael Miller, adults have to pay the price for their choices. You chose betrayal and vanity, and now you have to live with the consequence of having nothing. Don't you dare dream that I will be your savior. She turned to the head of security. From now on, if this man appears within 500 meters of this building, report him to the police immediately and press charges for harassment. And save today's security footage. If any misleading rumors appear online, we will take legal action. Yes, Miss Reed, the guard replied crisply. At his signal, several guards moved in, grabbed Michael, and began to drag him out like a sack of garbage. Evelyn Reed, you can't be so heartless. You'll regret this. I'm your husband. Michael's desperate screams echoed through the lobby, but they no longer stirred a single emotion in Evelyn's heart. She turned and walked to her private elevator. Sarah followed closely, her eyes shining with adoration. Miss Reed, that was just epic. That's exactly how you deal with trash like him. Evelyn's expression was placid, as if she had just dealt with a minor inconvenience. Epic. That was just loss management. The elevator doors closed, shutting out the noise. Evelyn looked at her sharp professional reflection in the mirrored walls and let out a long, slow breath. It was finally completely over. With the Michael Miller saga behind her, Evelyn had little time for reflection. Project Olympus was entering a crucial phase. At 8 p.m. in Alexander Sterling's office, he was reviewing a progress report sent by Evelyn. The bandage on his arm was gone, replaced by a small, waterproof dressing. Your efficiency is truly remarkable, Miss Reed, he said, closing the file and looking up with a smile. In just 2 weeks, not only have you won over the most difficult investors, but you've also secured government permits ahead of schedule. You flatter me, Mr. Sterling. With Sterling Enterprises investment, it's my duty to deliver satisfactory results, Evelyn replied, professionally, though her tone was softer than before. During his recovery, Alexander had quietly used his resources to clear obstacles for her, a silent, powerful support that gave her a sense of security she had never felt before. Now that work is out of the way, shall we move on to personal matters? Alexander's tone shifted. He stood up and leaned against his desk, a casual posture. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Personal matters. I heard Michael Miller caused a scene at your office today, Alexander said lightly, though a cold glint appeared in his eyes. Do I need to have someone create some more trouble for him? Perhaps his loan sharks could be a bit more persistent. Evelyn smiled. You're very well informed, but it's fine, thank you. He's a social pariah now. Not worth you dirtying your hands. Besides, she added, meeting his gaze, I've already given him my final answer. From now on, our lives are parallel lines that will never intersect. Good, Alexander nodded. He pulled a small, elegant velvet box from his pocket and handed it to her. What's this? Evelyn asked, surprised. Open it. She took the box and opened it. Inside was a stunning, uniquely designed diamond necklace. The main stone was a rare pink diamond surrounded by smaller white diamonds in the shape of a soaring phoenix. I bought it at an overseas auction. It's called Phoenix Ascent, Alexander said, his gaze deep and steady. I thought it was a perfect fit for you right now. Reborn from the ashes, more brilliant than ever before. Evelyn's heart trembled. Phoenix Ascent. This wasn't just a necklace. It was proof of his understanding of her journey. He understood her pain, but more importantly, he understood her pride. Alexander, this is too much, she said instinctively, trying to refuse. Accept it, he said, placing his hand over hers. His palm was warm. Consider it a gift to celebrate the successful first phase of Project Olympus, or a small bribe during my probation period. His deep eyes were filled with a playful, affectionate light. Evelyn looked at him, the defensive walls around her heart softening once again. She took the necklace, and instead of refusing, she turned, lifted her hair, and exposed her elegant nape. In that case, would you put it on for me? A smile bloomed in Alexander's eyes. He took the necklace and gently fastened it around her neck. The tips of his fingers brushed against her warm skin, sending a subtle spark between them. Click. The clasp was fastened. He didn't immediately pull away, instead leaning in to whisper in her ear, It's beautiful. You're even more beautiful wearing it, Evelyn. The warm breath on her ear sent a blush creeping up her cheeks. Just then, there was a knock on the office door. Mr. Sterling, there's an urgent document that needs your signature. The door opened, and Alexander's secretary saw the intimate scene, nearly dropping her file. She immediately turned around, covering her eyes. I'm so sorry, I saw nothing. Please continue. The door closed with a soft thud. Evelyn cleared her throat and tried to step back, but Alexander gently wrapped an arm around her waist. Why are you running away? He murmured with a low chuckle. Since we've already been misunderstood, why don't we make it real? Evelyn gave him a mock stern look. Mr. Sterling, this is your office. Then let's go somewhere else, he agreed. I heard there's a new French restaurant by the river. Would you do me the honor? Evelyn looked at his hopeful expression and finally smiled. All right, but I'm paying this time. I have to compensate for such an expensive gift. The honor is all mine. In another corner of the city, in a dilapidated apartment, Michael lay on a musty mattress, staring blankly at the ceiling. A loud bang came from the door, accompanied by vulgar curses. Michael Miller, you have the guts to borrow money. You better have the guts to open the door. I know you're in there. If you don't pay up, I'll kill you, Michael flinched, pulling the covers over his head and trembling. He regretted it. He truly regretted it. If he hadn't been so foolish, if he had just stood up for Evelyn once at that dinner, he would still be Michael Miller, the respected husband of Miss Reed, living in a penthouse, driving a sports car, the envy of all. But now it was all gone. And his mother, Sharon, the person he thought was his last hope, was currently in the living room, weeping amidst the wreckage and spewing curses. That heartless Evelyn Reed, that ungrateful monster, watching us suffer and not lifting a finger. I should have stopped Michael from marrying such a tyrannical woman in the first place. If he had married a submissive woman, even if we were poor, we wouldn't be in this mess. She still didn't understand. It was never Evelyn's strength that drove them to this point. It was their own endless greed and shamelessness. Hearing his mother's cries, Michael's irritation boiled over. He kicked off the covers and stormed out. Stop crying! You're so loud! If you hadn't insisted on seating Chloe in that chair, if you hadn't been so determined to crush Evelyn's spirit, would I be in this situation? This is all your fault. You ruined me. Sharon looked at him stunned. You're blaming me. You ungrateful child. Who was I doing it for? To save your face. To let you stand above that woman. You're the one who's too weak to control your own wife, and now you're blaming your mother. Why is my life so miserable? Their argument mingled with the banging on the door, echoing in the cramped, squalid room. A symphony of irony and absurdity. This was the dignity they had schemed to obtain, the ending they had so carefully engineered. Across the city, in a glittering French restaurant, Evelyn raised her glass and gently clinked it against Alexander's. The red wine swirled, reflecting her confident, serene smile. The past was dead. The future was bright. At that moment, she was finally and completely free from the tumor that was the Miller family, striding confidently toward her own brilliant destiny. The candlelight in the French restaurant flickered, illuminating Evelyn's elegant face. She swirled the red wine in her glass, looking at the sophisticated man across from her. The last dregs of negativity from the Michael Miller affair finally gone. What are you thinking about? Alexander asked. He had already cut his own steak and casually swapped plates with her. Nothing, Evelyn shook her head, spearing a tender piece of beef. Just that tomorrow the court summons will be delivered to Michael Miller. It's time for this farce to officially end. Alexander's eyes twinkled. He raised his glass to her. Then allow me to be the first to toast to Miss Reed's impending freedom. Clink. The clear sound echoed in the quiet restaurant, marking the collapse of an old order and the beginning of a new life. The next morning at the New York County Supreme Court. Despite Michael's desperate attempts to delay his appearance by feigning illness, Evelyn's formidable legal team easily thwarted his maneuvers. In court, Michael wore the same rumpled suit, looking gaunt and hollow-eyed. In the gallery, Sharon sat on the edge of her seat, her eyes fixed on her son, muttering, useless, completely useless. Evelyn, in a crisp white pantsuit with her hair in an elegant updo, exuded an aura of untouchable class and cold confidence. She sat at the plaintiff's table, not once, glancing at Michael. Your Honor, Evelyn's lawyer, announced in a clear, ringing voice, regarding the defendant Michael Miller's fault in the breakdown of the marriage, his improper disposal of marital assets, and his severe misconduct, the plaintiff's side has submitted complete and irrefutable evidence. Exhibit A. Records of the defendant's one-year affair with a third party, Chloe Sullivan, including text messages, hotel receipts, and numerous intimate photographs. Exhibit B. bank transaction records showing the defendant's unauthorized withdrawal of over $320,000 from the plaintiff Evelyn Reed's personal accounts for luxury purchases and personal expenses for the third party. Exhibit C. The official police report and medical assessment of the defendant's attempted assault with a deadly weapon. As the lawyer spoke, the evidence was displayed on a large screen. Each photo, each transaction record was like a resounding slap across Michael's face. Gasps and murmurs erupted from the gallery, and Michael wished the floor would swallow him whole. "No. That's not true," he stammered. "I was tricked. That money, it was a loan." "A loan," Evelyn's lawyer scoffed. "Do you have a promissory note, Mr. Miller, a repayment plan? Do you call buying Hermes bags and diamond rings for your mistress with your wife's hard-earned money a loan?" Michael was speechless, his face turning a deep shade of purple. Sharon couldn't hold back. "That was living expenses. I'm his mother. What's wrong with a wife's money being used for family? It's only natural." "Order," the judge banged his gavel. "Any further outbursts from the gallery will result in removal." Sharon shrank back silenced but shot a venomous glare at Evelyn. The rest of the trial was a one-sided slaughter. Michael's bargain bin lawyer was powerless against the mountain of evidence weakly repeating requests for mediation. The defendant's actions constitute a serious breach of marital duty. The judge read the final verdict, each word a death sentence for Michael. In light of the existing prenuptial agreement, the defendant's status as the at-fault party, and the malicious transfer of assets, the court rules as follows. 1. The divorce between the plaintiff Evelyn Reed and the defendant Michael Miller is granted. 2. The defendant Michael Miller is not entitled to any division of marital property and has no right to claim spousal support. 3. The defendant is ordered to repay the plaintiff the $320,000 he improperly disposed of plus an additional $100 punitive damages. 4. All other claims by the defendant are dismissed. Bang! The gavel fell. Michael slumped in his chair, his eyes vacant. Net worth $0. Debt $420,000. He was finished. I object. I object." Sharon rushed forward, trying to get to Evelyn, but was restrained by the court bailiffs. "Evelyn Reed, you venomous snake. You have so much money, why do you have to ruin us? You'll be punished by God." Evelyn calmly gathered her papers and walked to the railing, looking down at the hysterical old woman. "Sharon, it wasn't me who ruined you. It was your own greed." Her voice was quiet but sharp. "When you were parading your son's mistress at the party to humiliate me, did you think of today? When your son was using my money to support another woman, did you say a single word to stop him? This $420,000 is what your son owes me, and it's the justice your family owes me." She then turned to the catatonic Michael. "I'll be filing a court order for enforcement. If you can't pay, I hope you enjoy spending the rest of your life on the bad credit list." Without a shred of sympathy, Evelyn walked out of the courtroom, leaving behind Sharon's desperate sobs and Michael's dead silence. Outside the courthouse, the sun was bright. She took a deep breath of free air. "Congratulations," a smooth, deep voice said. Alexander Sterling was leaning against a black Maybach holding a bouquet of red roses and smiling at her. "What are you doing here?" she asked, pleasantly surprised. "How could I miss such an important moment?" he said, handing her the flowers. "I came to pick up my girlfriend from work, and to celebrate her new life." Girlfriend Evelyn raised an eyebrow, accepting the fragrant bouquet. "Aren't you moving a little fast, mister?" "Sterling, not at all," Alexander said, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "I've waited long enough. Any longer and someone else might beat me to it." Evelyn laughed, a bright, genuine sound. She linked her arm through his. "All right then, boyfriend. Where are we eating? My treat." "Anywhere, as long as I'm with you." As they walked away, a disheveled Michael stumbled out of the courthouse and saw them. The sight of Evelyn, the woman who once adored him now, laughing happily with a man 1,000 times his superior, was a dagger to his heart. He was nothing but trash discarded on the roadside. "What are you looking at? Haven't you embarrassed us enough?" Sharon slapped his back. "Start thinking about how you're going to get that money. It's over $400,000. If we don't pay it, we'll be begging on the streets." Michael staggered, then turned. The last thread of affection for his mother snapped. "Money, money, that's all you care about," he roared, his eyes bloodshot. "If you hadn't made such a scene, if you hadn't sided with Chloe, would I be here today? Now I have nothing." "Are you happy now?" Sharon, shocked, speechless, sank onto the steps and began to wail. Oh, my miserable life, I raised an ungrateful snake, can't even handle his own life, and he blames his mother. Passers-by stared at the spectacle. Disgusted by the farce, Michael didn't bother to help her up. He just turned and stumbled away into the crowd, a man with no home to return to. A week later in Evelyn's office. Good news, miss. Reed, Sarah burst in. The court seized Michael Miller's car and sold it at auction for $20,000. And she paused with a satisfied look. Chloe Sullivan has been arrested. Oh, turns out after she took Michael's money and fled south, she got involved in illegal online gambling, lost everything, and ended up in debt to loan sharks. She was caught red-handed trying to steal a client's Rolex watch to pay them off. When the police ran her record, they found she was wanted in connection with our case and transferred her back here. Evelyn just nodded, unsurprised. As for Sharon Miller, Sarah continued, her pension account has been frozen. She's been showing up at the construction site where Michael is working, demanding that he support her. He's close to losing that job too. Let them be, Evelyn said, her gaze fixed on the city's skyline. From now on, you don't need to report any news about irrelevant people to me. Understood, Miss Reed. Oh, and Mr. Sterling sent flowers. He said it's a pre-congratulation for your promotion to global partner. Evelyn smiled. Headquarters had confirmed it yesterday. In light of the monumental success of Project Olympus, she was being promoted to a position overseeing the entire Asia-Pacific region. Her salary would double. She was no longer the daughter-in-law who endured humiliation. She was the queen of her industry. That evening, the familiar Maybach was waiting for her outside. Alexander stood by the car looking impossibly handsome. Tired? He asked, taking her briefcase. A little, she said, linking her arm through his. What's the special occasion? There's somewhere I want to take you. The car stopped at a private marina. A luxurious white yacht named Phoenix was docked. I told you you're like a phoenix rising, Alexander said, leading her onto the boat. A promotion gift. I figured you'd prefer the freedom to go anywhere over jewelry. Standing on the deck, the wind in her hair, watching the city lights glitter on the water, all the pain and betrayal of the past seemed to melt away. Thank you, Alexander, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for coming into my life. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. I should be thanking you, Evelyn, for being so brilliant, and for giving me a chance. He held her close. The past is over. From now on, you have me, your career, and all the beauty in the world. We have a long, wonderful future ahead of us. Evelyn closed her eyes and leaned back into his embrace, a blissful smile on her face. Yes, a long, wonderful future. The submissive woman she once was gone. In her place stood a woman in complete control of her own destiny, with a love who was her equal. This was the life she deserved. The dark, musty apartment smelled of instant noodles. Sharon clutched the final enforcement notice from the court, her eyes crazed. Mom, stop staring at it, Michael said, walking in with 2 cheap beers. The dust from the construction site still clung to his clothes. $420, 000, Sharon muttered, then looked at him with desperate eyes. Michael, go and beg her. You were married once. She's so rich, what's a few $100,000 to her? Just grovel, she'll take pity on you. Pity, Michael laughed dryly. Mom, you didn't see her in court. She looked at me like I was a dog. She's not the woman she used to be. Then what do we do? Am I supposed to collect cans to pay this off? Sharon wailed. It's all that Chloe's fault, that homewrecker. I knew she was a bad seed. Michael's hand tightened on the beer bottle. At the mention of Chloe's name, a deep hatred filled his eyes. If he hadn't been so vain, if he hadn't let his mother humiliate Evelyn at that party, he would still be living the good life. But there were no ifs in life. Only consequences. 6 months later, at the Global Financial Summit in New York, the spotlight was focused on one person. And now, please welcome the winner of this year's Most Influential Investor Award and our keynote speaker, global partner at TS Aspen Miss, Evelyn Reed. Amid thunderous applause, Evelyn walked onto the stage in a deep blue suit, radiating power and confidence. Good evening, everyone, she began. 2 years ago, someone told me that in the wolf pit of investment banking, a woman's place was merely decorative. Today, with TS Aspen's performance in the Asia-Pacific region, I am here to tell you that gender is the biggest glass ceiling in the business world, and it was made to be shattered. In the front row, Alexander Sterling watched her, his face beaming with pride. This was his love, his queen. Later at the reception, a commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. A ragged, desperate-looking man was trying to force his way in. Let me in. I need to see Evelyn Reed. I'm her ex-husband. It was Michael. He looked like a completely different person, broken and crazed. Evelyn, you're so rich. Why did you have to ruin me? My mother is sick. She needs surgery. Just give me 50,000. No, 10,000. Please, I'm begging you. The crowd murmured in disgust. Evelyn turned her expression unreadable. She walked towards him, her voice as cold as ice. Michael Miller, this is a financial summit, not a public restroom for you to air your dirty laundry. Evelyn, please help me, he wailed. The foreman at the construction site ran off with our wages. My mom had a stroke. You used to feed stray cats, remember? You're a kind person. Think of it as charity. Kindness is reserved for those who deserve it, she said. She turned to a security guard and handed him a business card. Please enhance security. We can't have such filth contaminating the event. As she turned to leave, Michael, seeing all hope was lost, pulled out a rusty utility knife. If you won't let me live, then we all die, he screamed, lunging at her. In a flash, Alexander was there. A swift kick broke Michael's wrist, sending the knife flying. In a second, he had Michael pinned to the floor, his voice a low, dangerous growl. You want to die. Security guards swarmed in and dragged the screaming Michael away. The chaos subsided. Alexander turned to Evelyn, his rage replaced by deep concern. Are you all right? She shook her head, a warmth spreading through her chest. I'm fine. Thank you, Alexander. Protecting you is my instinct, he said, taking her hand. He then turned to the shocked guests. My apologies for the disturbance. That man is my fiancé's ex-husband. As you can see, her decision to leave him was the best decision she ever made. Fiancée Evelyn looked at him surprised. Alexander smiled, and then dropped to one knee. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a brilliant pink diamond ring. Evelyn, I was going to wait, but that moment just now made me realize I don't want to wait another second. I want to officially stand by your side to protect you from every storm. Will you marry me? Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. This man had healed her, had shown her what true love and partnership were. The room erupted in applause. Marry him, marry him. With a radiant smile, she nodded. Yes. A month later, Michael Miller was sentenced to 5 years in prison for attempted murder. Sharon, homeless and alone, ended up in a public shelter. Chloe was still serving time for theft. The villains had received their just desserts. And Evelyn stood in the T.S. Aspen headquarters, looking out over the city. On her desk lay a wedding invitation, with her and Alexander's names. Her phone rang. It was a text from Olivia. Yes, girl. This is the ultimate girl boss ending. So proud of you, Evelyn smiled. Alexander appeared in the doorway, the sunlight framing him like a halo. Ready to go, future Mrs. Sterling, he asked, holding out his hand. She walked over and placed her hand in his. Always. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and rose. Her golden age was just beginning. 1 year later, the wedding of the century was taking place at the peninsula. The guest list was a who's who of the business world. Evelyn, in a breathtaking custom-made gown, walked down the aisle toward Alexander. 2 years ago, she had walked out of a party alone in humiliation. Today, she was walking toward her future, surrounded by love and respect. As they exchanged rings, she whispered, "Thank you for showing me that the best love is a partnership, an equal footing where we build each other up." In a grim corner of the city, in a prison visitation room, Sharon looked at the hollowed-out shell of her son. "Michael, my son," she sobbed. "I'm living in a basement eating scraps." "Isn't that what you wanted, Mom?" he replied, his voice dead. "You're the one who started all this. You ruined me." The visitation time was over. As Sharon walked out of the prison, the news on a public screen showed Evelyn's wedding. The headline read, "Queen of Investing Evelyn Reed marries Sterling Group, gives billions in dowry." Sharon stared at the screen, tears of bitter regret streaming down her face. If only she had shown her daughter-in-law an ounce of respect. In another part of the city, Chloe was washing hair in a cheap salon, her hands rough and chapped from the harsh shampoo. She saw the same news report, the same beautiful bride. The cheap towel in her hands fell to the floor. The woman she once scorned was now living a fairy tale, while she who had bet everything on her youth and cunning was trapped in a nightmare. 5 years later, Evelyn, now a legend in her field, was wrapping up a meeting. "Miss Reed, here is the schedule for the next quarter," said her assistant Sarah, now a senior partner herself, placing it on her desk. Evelyn smiled. "And please cancel my appointments for tonight. It's my daughter's birthday." Just then, the door burst open and a little girl in a pink dress ran in. Mommy Evelyn's face lit up as she scooped her daughter into her arms. Sweetheart, what are you doing here? Daddy's here to pick you up. Alexander stood in the doorway, holding Evelyn's favorite matcha cake. He had only grown more handsome with age. Mrs. Sterling, would you care to join me for dinner? He asked with a warm smile. Evelyn, holding her daughter, walked over and kissed him. The honor is all mine. Outside the window, the setting sun bathed the city in gold. The pain of the past was long gone, replaced by a look more brilliant and fulfilling than she could have ever imagined. She had learned that true strength was not about never getting hurt, but about carrying your scars and still running forward. And that true happiness was not about relying on someone, but about knowing you had your own bread and finding a wonderful person to share it with. This was Evelyn Reed's perfect ending.